Hi guys, I'm Martina.
I'm Vila.
And I'm Isabel. And we hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy during this quarantine.
We are holding a series of interviews with women in STEM that can hopefully inspire everyone, even when we are stuck at home. And today we are interviewing Yang Yang Zhang.
So Yang Yang first worked with us and the whole Girls Will Code team during Girl Forward 2018 when she was a speaker. So without further ado, let's begin this interview. So Yang Yang, can you just introduce yourself and explain what you do?
Sure. My name is Yang Yang. As you guys said, I'm the managing director of Zenit Philippines, which is a payments infrastructure company that works across Southeast Asia. So I head the expansion team here on the tech side and also on the product side.
So, what has been your path been like leading up to what you do now in the STEM field?
I had a very convoluted path in the STEM field. So I started coding when I was kind of a kid. I was 5. My mom kind of tricked me into it because she was not super great at English and she needed someone to translate her books when she was doing a distance coding program. And so starting when I was 5, I actually always thought I'd end up as a developer, not a product person, because the product field I'm really old, so the product field didn't exist when I was a kid. I went to MIT for undergrad, started out as a computer science major actually, but quickly realized that I really wanted to interact with people. And back then, being a developer and just building what someone else had already designed, there was no element of actual architecture or product. So I decided I wanted to go into business so that I had more of that hands-on feel where I could create the products that I was going to be, selling or building. But I always kind of missed STEM. I think that my first venture was in education where I did a lot of STEM-focused, mentorship and teaching during that as well. So I taught AP Computer Science. I mentored a couple of kids who got into Caltech and MIT, working on their own STEM projects. And then I realized, hey, I want to be the co-founder of a mobile app startup that was based in the Valley in 2015. That's my first really involved product role. So I remember going into it, I had no idea back then what UI or UX was. Learned kind of on the job over 9 months, building up to an MVP. And at the end of it, I realized that I really, really love the role of product because it allows you to kind of be between the development side. So for those of you who don't know, being a product manager basically means that you're the one who comes up with all the features that a particular app or product has in the end. So it was really nice to let me combine my passion for business and my passion for development without actually being a coder day to day. So I decided I really love that role, have kind of been in product ever since. My next role was as Chief Marketing Officer for an environmental tech company, where I did sort of a product marketing role there. Knew nothing about civil engineering, but that's what I love because I think that getting involved in technology today, there's so many levels on which you can get involved that you don't actually need to know the hardcore science behind it to have an impact. And then co-founded a crypto exchange in the Philippines called PDAX in 2017. Was there for about 2 years before I joined Zenit. So yeah, it's a really long, convoluted path. Starting with full development and ending in passion for product management.
So
you seem to have a lot of experience in tech in the tech field and learning coding. Can you talk about your experience in your school and field? Was there a gender imbalance?
So it's really interesting. I think being a woman in tech, you get this question a lot, and I actually feel one of the things that really helped me was never thinking of myself as a girl who coded and just thinking about being really aggressive and competing with everyone else. So I think especially because at MIT there always has been a gender imbalance, so I think people are just so used to it. I think in the computer science, it was always a 2-to-1 ratio between men and women. I think I just got really used to being in the minority, and so it's normalized for me. I think that today, for example, every once in a while, every couple months, I'll realize wow, I'm really the only woman in most of the meetings that I'm in, but it no longer seems weird. So I think in terms of gender imbalance, my best advice is always to, I guess you can't ignore it because it's always going to be a factor, but don't let it get you down. I think the more you focus on the fact that you may be the minority in coding classes, you may be the minority in meetings, in leadership. For example, in the environmental tech startup I was part of, I was probably the only woman in maybe even like intermediate leadership, definitely in senior leadership. Everyone else was over the age of 45 and Korean. And I think that if I had let it get to me, there were so many times people would walk into the boardroom and assume that I was there to get the coffee or to take down like orders or to like go get like water for everybody, but you just have to stand your ground. And I think that the more you try to fight it and make it obvious that that you belong there, the worse it is for you. I think the best thing is just to fake it till you make it, show that confidence from day one, and don't let the idea of gender imbalance stop you from pursuing the role you really want.
That's really cool and like really good advice. And speaking of, during your journey in tech, were there any role models that you looked up to, or are there any role models that you look up to even now?
Yeah, so growing up, my biggest role model was Marie Curie. Which is like a terrible role model to look up to because she died for her science. But I think what I loved was that back then, there were a couple of things actually. I loved the fact that she was able to work with her husband as a partner and that she was equally well respected as a scientist. And so I think a lot of times, my husband and I actually were co-founders in PDX, and I think that a lot of times people feel like, oh, is that like anti-feminist? But in fact, like if you look at the gender roles even there, I headed product and tech and he headed marketing, which seems like such a reversal of what people would typically expect. And I really like the fact that, Marie Curie kind of set that standard, right? Like she was working with her husband. She was definitely not dominated by his career, but they were able to find like true gender parity. I think another role model, not really in STEM, but just in education in general, was Eleanor Roosevelt. Again, an example of like a super independent woman who like was a trailblazer no matter where she was. I think I looked a lot to examples earlier in the 20th century because I felt like those were like real groundbreaking women. Another, I think there's an initiative in the US. It's not Girls Who Code, the actual organization. I forget her name now, but the founder of Girls Who Code is really amazing.
Oh, I think Resh. Is it Resh now?
Yes. I follow her on Instagram. I feel so bad that I'm forgetting her name right now, but I think the general mission that she had earlier on, because as coding became more accepted as a discipline in those schools in developed countries, I think that women were very rarely included in that. Like most people would be like, hey, you're a gamer, like you should start coding so you can like code new levels on like Minecraft. But no one ever saw like, hey, like if you're a woman, you may want to code because you have a totally different understanding of like UX or a totally different understanding of a whole sector of the market that so many people want to target and people don't understand completely. And so I think like starting those initiatives, I'd say like for now, she's probably the woman in tech I look up to the most.
Yeah, I think it's really important because she also teaches like, I think she gave a TED talk, and instead of just talking about like purely about Girls Who Code and the things that she's done with it, she talked about like bravery and just like natural characteristics that we as a society should like look up to.
Yeah.
So what do you think is the top coolest thing in STEM right now?
There's so many. So I think if I were to go into like layers of nerdiness, I think the fact that deep learning is actually becoming a reality is really cool. When I was majoring in comp sci in 2001, it's a long time ago, I was focused on AI. And back then AI was completely different. I think like back then the idea of like reinforcement learning or the idea of actually like being able to apply sort of real life logical processes to AI was just, it was a pipe dream at the time. And it's really nice that over my lifetime and just like this single generation, I've seen it kind of evolve into something that is really going to revolutionize a lot of industries in the next 10 years. So I think that by far is the coolest thing in STEM. I think the other is the application of innovation to emerging markets in general. I think that if you look at how productivity at different stages through, I guess, the world's development has advanced in leaps and bounds, the biggest inflection points have always come because of an emerging technology. And so I think the computing, of course, like the technological revolution of like the late 1800s, but then having computing come into play, and now having cloud computing and potentially quantum computing come into play, it really just expands the potential of not only individuals, but companies, our limited world resources. So I think in terms of like being able to apply that multiple to what the world is capable of accomplishing, I do really feel like that's really exciting, because I think it will become a great leveler globally for the development of emerging markets as well.
So you said that AI was different from how it was before, and with tech ever changing, many believe that the technology sector seems intimidating. Can you inform us how you balance work and personal life?
What is personal life? I'm kidding. So I think that one of the things, I think it's inevitable that work will creep into your personal life. I think that a couple of things I've learned over the last, I'd say, 5 years. One, you always have to take a day, even if it's half a day on a Sunday where you just don't think about anything about work. No matter how busy you are, you have to find what that one thing is. Whether it's like yoga, for me, it's Quora. Like, I will just read the most random threads on Quora for an hour, and it will just clear everything and like relieve all my stress. But even if I feel super guilty because I have a million things on my to-do list, if I don't clear that time, it feels like my mind never resets. So I think that's one of the biggest things I learned. The second is that you really have to learn to embrace work in two different, I guess on two different levels. Because I think like everyone does this kind of subconsciously, but doesn't like consciously separate the ways you celebrate work. There's that feeling of accomplishment where it's like busy work, or like manual work that you don't really love, and you get to like check it off a checklist. And that's like one sense of fulfillment. But there's another one where it's like you close a really amazing deal, or you like get a really great partnership, or like, you know, even like in terms of like building a project for STEM, like in high school, it's like you finish a project and someone else like gets to see and appreciate your work. That goes into a sense of personal fulfillment outside of just professional accomplishment. So I think you have to learn to like let yourself celebrate those victories on a personal level as well. So in that sense, like even the things that you don't just separate work accomplishments and work burdens into their own category. It's like, okay, you need to leave the work burdens at the door, but take home the work accomplishments. And then I think 3, like especially for like women, find a partner who will appreciate and like celebrate the fact that you're an ambitious woman who will kind of be workaholic sometimes, and who won't mind like taking over, I don't know, preparing dinner or running out to like do errands or something. I think it's super important. It's really helped me balance like work and personal life. I think my husband's been great, especially because we've gone through this co-founder experience. But I think, yeah, it's something that people don't talk about a lot, but it's definitely helped.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Speaking of working from home, are there ways that because of the quarantine, like has it changed how you work or like work from home?
Yeah, so my life used to be totally external meetings. I would spend probably 30% of my day on the road, sometimes, like on bad days, maybe like 50% of my day on the road. So it's been, I have cabin fever really badly right now. The other day I was telling my husband, I was like, I don't think I'm gonna know how to like wear heels at the end of this. But that stuff aside, I think in general, I feel that being on calls is slightly more exhausting than being in person because it's much harder to build rapport. So I feel like I actually end up like emoting more after a long day of calls than I do if I'm just doing external meetings, because I can't can't give myself the excuse of the breather in between, right? Like if I have to go from Makati to like Mondolian for a meeting, I have those 30 minutes in the car, maybe like an hour and a half in traffic. But here it's like, okay, I booked a meeting from 4 to 4:30. If someone asks for a 4:30 meeting, I'm like jumping to the next like meeting immediately. So I think in general, it like has definitely increased the amount of context switching that I do, because again, I don't have the luxury of blocking off 6 hours for internal meetings where I just have like my product management hat on, and then I do like partnerships meetings when I'm external. It's like back and forth between the two, so I say that changes the most. The good part is I set up a monitor, so now I have like a whole other interface that will be even more, I guess, engaging and keep me in front of it.
Nice. So, separately from your work life, how else do you think you have or will change because of the extended lockdown?
So, actually, as part of work, I do a lot of thinking on this because we always want to think about how consumer behavior is going to change. Specifically for me, there are a couple things I learned. I learned that it is hard to context switch. I think that once I have the ability to go back to not necessarily context switching all the time, I would set aside more time to be able to focus on specific projects. The second is that I do think I would think twice before heading out to publish on for a night out, or like going out to dinner if I don't have to, you know? I think that you learn that you're more self-sufficient than you think. I haven't cooked for maybe 3 years, but you know, we're still alive, well-fed during this time. So I think in general, it's like learning that you can be self-sufficient. A lot of the little luxuries that you count on a day-to-day basis you maybe don't need. And then also just, I think, teaching yourself how to be efficient with working in non-external meetings.
How do you think that this pandemic will affect the future of technology?
I can tell you what I hope, and then I'll tell you what I think. As part of a payments company, my hope is that it will inspire a lot of people to take payments online. So I think it has proven that digital payments would really, really solve a lot of friction points we face today. I think the pandemic will have a very polarizing effect on the future of technology. So in terms of tech that has real life use cases and real life applications today, I think there will be a boost in terms of customers that are willing to explore it. Because I think people are learning, they can live their lives remotely. You know, there's a lot of people who've never needed to turn to tech all of a sudden have to. But on the flip side, I think that the economic impact will make it harder for companies to fund really expensive R&D projects. So I think a lot of those really, really exciting applications, let's say deep learning, that will cost a lot of money to develop, may slow a little bit while people concentrate resources on the immediate applications.
Okay, so our next question is that from your past talks and also from like meeting you, I've learned that you're a very global person and that you take a lot of risks. So in your personal life or also like in your professional career, what has been like the biggest risk that you've taken?
Okay, they're a little bit tied. So professionally, I think the biggest risk was definitely moving to the Philippines. So I am not Filipino. I had no ties to the Philippines when I moved here. It was really just for the opportunity and the ability to start PDX. So that was definitely a personal and a professional risk at the time. I think the biggest personal risk was the year before that. I chose to move to Korea. Again, my first time in Asia. I had moved, I was born in China, but I moved to the States when I was 5. So I had no knowledge of the language. I felt like I had gone mute because all of a sudden I lost all of my communication skills and couldn't really talk to anybody around me. I definitely feel like when you say global person, it's like becoming a global person was an enormous risk. But now I also cannot imagine my life back in the States. Like so many of my friends and parents are like, oh my gosh, like during this COVID crisis, like aren't you going to come home? I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like my home is here now. I think that despite the fact that it was a huge risk, it's what you make of it, and I'm glad I took the choice. So, still here.
So, seeing as you've been a student in a STEM field, as well as you've worked with lots of students in the STEM field, what would you say to a student right now who plans on working or studying in the STEM field?
Okay, there are 3 things. The first, learn to code, no matter what you're doing. I think that in the future, it will be very difficult to work in STEM without some baseline understanding of any coding language. It doesn't necessarily have to be a specific coding language. It doesn't have to be anything that's going to be customer facing. But I think just understanding how a computer thinks will be very important in being able to design solutions or products in the future. The second would be open to exploration. I think early on people tend to fixate on a particular area they're very interested in. But as you can see through my meandering career and passions, I think that you can discover so many other things you're passionate about if you're open. And so I think that to me, it's best to see whatever STEM field you're most engaged in now as a door opener, and use that, if that's your passion right now, use that as a context through which to explore a lot of other different fields, and then take any opportunity as they come to you. So I think that there's so many opportunities instead, and the most exciting part about it is that you're on the bleeding edge of innovation all the time. So I think that it's really someone who continues to remain curious and learn about things outside of their immediate field of interest that will be able to capitalize on them at any given point in time.
Okay, so this is our last question. What tips would you give to aspiring girls in STEM other than what you've talked about?
Aspiring girls in STEM. Speak up. I think that a lot of times we are still at a phase in many different fields of STEM in which women have not necessarily been found parity of respect or parity of acknowledgement in those fields. And so I think sometimes girls don't feel as if their opinions are as valuable because they are speaking from a perspective that is not the majority. But I think sometimes, especially if you look at the way that products have developed, the way that technology has developed, it is the outside perspective, or in product management terms, the edge cases that really make a product shine. And so I think a lot of times it's trust your gut, speak up, don't assume if you don't agree with the way something's being designed or built that you are the one who is wrong. Maybe it's just that no one has thought about it from the perspective of you, a girl in STEM, before. And that's what's actually going to make that product more usable for the entire population and not just a male-dominated population. I think that basically at this point, this is a generation at which we can break this vicious cycle where a lot of STEM products, a lot of STEM solutions have been designed by a male-dominated workforce. And the more female voices and input come into that, the more the products themselves will also start appealing to a broader base of people. So I think in general, it's just really just that. Just speak up, trust your own opinions, and just don't get intimidated.
Okay, so those are all of our questions. Thank you so much, Yang Yang, for joining us today. I think that on behalf of Martina and Leila and myself, we all had a very eye-opening experience from our conversation.
And to the viewers, if you want more content like this, please follow Girls Will Code on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you so
guys.
much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night.